On March 9th and 10th, the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies took place in the United Arab Emirates capital city of Abu Dhabi. The forum brought together around 250 Muslim scholars and leaders from across the Middle East to discuss what forum participant and Libyan ambassador to the UAE, Aaron El-Nayed, called the alarming attempts by extremists to use Islam to legitimize acts of terror and violence, and creating incentives for stopping and reversing that trend. The two-day forum was hosted by Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, the UAE's Minister of Foreign Affairs, and featured conferences about the meaning of jihad, clerical responsibility, and the influence of extremism on Muslim youth. Forum attendees included university professors and presidents, government ministers, and Muslim leaders from across the world. Women were also invited to speak at the landmark forum, including UK District Judge and domestic violence expert Marilyn Mornington. One of the clearer messages to come out of the Forum for Promoting Peace was from the emphasis on reaching out to Muslim youth and clearing their misconceptions about the nature of Islam and the duties of Muslims. Many in attendance were warned of extremist influence on the idealistic and impressionable, and said the world peace could only be achieved through active engagement and open communication with young people. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, said the use of narrow interpretations of Islam perpetrated by a minority spreads hate, creates conflict, and distorts the image of Islam and Muslims to the rest of the world. He called the true image of Islam one of friendship, brotherhood, peace, and cooperation. On March 8th, a group of Arabic activists bared all in the grounds of the Louvre Museum in Paris, France, in support of women's rights in the Middle East and North Africa. 6 women from across the Arab world staged a nude demonstration holding national flags of Algeria, Egypt, Iran, and Tunisia. In place of protest signs, the women wrote slogans in many different languages across their own bodies. Among the activists were Tunisian feminist Amina Saboui, who spent more than 2 months in a Tunisian prison last year for desecrating a cemetery when she wrote the name of a feminist political group, Femin, on a wall. In an internet video she posted, Iranian activist and fellow protest participant Mariam Namazi, Saboui explains that fear for women in the Arab world was her motivation in participating in this demonstration. The women circled the Louvre pyramids in the courtyard of the main museum entrance, chanting for liberty and secularism. A crowd of onlookers gathered and applauded the women while snapping pictures with their phones. The French police were lenient, allowing the protest to continue for several minutes and only dispersing the crowd after the protesters had covered themselves. The women were temporarily detained by French police and released without charges. Protest organizer Safia Lebdi said the protest was timed to coincide with International Women's Day, and that she and her Muslim sisters carried the flags of the Arab world as a representation of the cultural and legal oppression of Arab and Muslim women in those countries. March 13th marked the first full year of Pope Francis's tenure. The new pontiff has raised expectations among Vatican leaders and Catholics around the world about the possibility of reforms. From creating an increased role for women in the ministry to dismantling of clerical wealth and power, Francis seems intent on setting aside the old traditions and making the Church a force for the future. First on the Pope's agenda is opening the lines of communication not only for clergy and congregation, but for the Vatican as well. His insistence on hearing criticism, as well as a predilection for holding meetings, has gotten him the label of annoying by at least one Vatican insider. However, the Pope is insistent, openly including himself on his list of Catholic sinners seeking guidance. Francis's call for dialogue, including dissent, is a radical change from the top-down leadership style of his predecessors. Under John Paul II and Benedict XVI, discussion on doctrine was discouraged, and Vatican bureaucracy, called the Roman Curia, often acted as inquisitors, stamping out unorthodoxy among the clergy. Pope Francis has already warned against expecting more of the same, telling his first group of cardinals that they are not to think of themselves as a royal court, and that their place is to lead not by domination but by service. The reform expectations and conversations come ahead of the upcoming October Synod, a large meeting of bishops. Topics of discussion will include the status of divorced people and homosexuals in the Church, as well as addressing the culture of careerism among clergy and how to put the Church back out among the people where Francis believes it belongs. A church that does not get out, he says, gets sick from being locked up.